Hey guys, Raj here. Today I've got a list video for you today. I'm going to be talking about 5 fragrances that I regret purchasing. So not a great list for me, but hopefully this might be entertaining for some people out there. It happens to all of us, we buy fragrances and they just don't work out. We regret buying them. Maybe we like them at the start, but then we turn on them and we regret ever owning the thing in the first place, and then you either give them away or sell, or they just sit on your shelf collecting dust. Sometimes you might blind buy fragrances. They could be impulse purchases. Maybe you haven't tested them out enough, or maybe you like it at first and then you later change your mind. That's just the way things go. So I've got 5 fragrances for you today. I've gone through my list of fragrances that I used to own. So on my base notes profile, there's a wardrobe where you can list all of the fragrances that you own, have owned, what's on your wish list. It's actually quite handy. So I went through the list and I've come up with 5. So starting off with fragrance number 1, and I don't blind buy very often. In fact, nowadays I don't. But in the past, I rarely blind bought any fragrances. I don't recommend that you blind buy any fragrances. If you don't know what that means, it means when you've never tried a fragrance before, but you buy it the full size. And I did this a couple of times. It never really worked out for me, but one time it really didn't work out for me, and this is when I blind bought Narciso Rodriguez for him. And oh my god, I remember, when you buy, everybody likes the feeling of when you buy a fragrance and when the package arrives. And I had read some comments and I had watched some YouTube reviews on this one, and the description sounded a little bit unusual, but I was a little bit experimental back then, and I bought it, ripped open the packaging, sprayed it on, and I was like in shock. I was absolutely horrified as to what I was smelling. It smelled gross. For me, it was a fragrance that kind of smelled like wet cardboard with a dead animal inside that cardboard. It was really bad. It's probably slightly exaggerating, I realize that, but in terms of the notes for this one, it was quite simple. There's basically violet leaf, patchouli, amber, and musk. So potentially, definitely quite punchy notes, and it came across as very, very harsh, and was a weird release for me. I didn't enjoy it. So as you guys know, I don't have all of these bottles except for one, so I'll show pictures instead. But yeah, Narciso Rodriguez for him. That was my first fragrance that's the first fragrance on the list of 5 fragrances I regret purchasing. Going on to fragrance number 2. Now this is from a brand that I really, really appreciate, or certainly admire, and it's a brand that I had quite a few fragrances from, probably around 6 or 7, I'd say. And this brand is Serge Lutens, and the fragrance that I regret purchasing is Santal de Mysore. Santal de Mysore is, as the name implies, an Indian sandalwood-based fragrance, but it also has a lot of other Indian things in there, specifically the spices. And I did a video a long time ago called, you can look it up. It's top 10 most complex and intense fragrances, something like that. And this made it into the list. And what I said in that video was, if you want to smell like you've been cooking in a kitchen of an Indian restaurant for the entire day, then buy Santal de Mysore, because it does have an intense spiciness, borders on smelling like curry. As the fragrance dries down, thankfully it turns into this really nice, quite sandalwood notes. Really shines through in the base of the fragrance. But to get there, you have to go through all of these really intense spices that border on smelling like BO. They smelled a bit stale to me, and I don't know what I was doing, like buying that fragrance. As I said, I was much more experimental. You dive into this world of especially niche fragrances, and you go a little bit crazy. But yeah, that was a fragrance that just didn't work out for me. Going on to fragrance number 3, and this is a fragrance that I do own in the full size currently. Now, this fragrance, I don't actually dislike the fragrance. I like it, but do I love it? And that's the key thing. And that fragrance is from the brand Abdul Samad Al Qureshi, and the fragrance is Ashab Aoud. You might even be able to see some oud pieces floating around in the bottle. And this is a nice fragrance, but I'll tell you why I regret purchasing it. So when I was in Morocco, I was in Marrakesh, and I went to the Abdul Samad Al Qureshi store, and I tried a lot of the spray-on fragrances, I tried on the oils, and it was interesting to get into the brand and try some things. I have to be honest, I wasn't blown away by the probably around 10 different things that I tried in oil or spray form. But this was the one that stood out for me the most, and I definitely want to explore more from the brand. It's very highly regarded, actually. I bought this fragrance more on an impulse, and that's really not a great thing to do. And I should have learnt my lesson. I bought this fragrance a couple of years ago, actually, so, you know, I should have known better. But, you know, when you're abroad, you're on holiday, you want to buy something, you're there in the store, you want to get something that reminds you of your trip. I've been meaning to try this brand for a long time and finally got the chance to. And it's one of those where I enjoy wearing it. It has a nice scent. I will review this fragrance, but I don't love it. And that's what I really want and that's what I've been trying to do over the past few years, is make my collection full of fragrances that I love. Fragrances that I would rate, 9 out of 10 and 10 out of 10. This one is a like, but it's not a love. And we all make mistakes. We've all been there. But yeah, that's how it goes sometimes. Going on to fragrance number 4 in this list of 5 fragrances that I regret purchasing, from the brand Mancera. I've owned a couple of Manceras before, sampled a few. I'm not really a fan of the house. I think the notes, I don't really like the ingredients that they use. I find a lot of the fragrances quite harsh or overpowering or just unnecessarily strong. Some of them are actually quite nice. And one fragrance that I owned, which I probably just didn't test this one out enough, is Black Intensive Oud. Now, Black Intensive Oud has a lot of notes in there. There's a lot of spices, saffron, oud, rose, patchouli. It's very, very oriental, very intense, as the name suggests. And the clue was in the name, but I guess I just wasn't really listening when I bought this fragrance. For me, it's too loud. It's a little bit sickly sweet. The spices are a little bit too heavy. And after a while, it just became a little bit too much for me to handle. And I really started to not enjoy wearing the fragrance. I probably should have tested it a little bit more, but I guess I was a little bit more trigger happy back in the day. Black Intensive Oud just did not work for me. I often find a lot of Mancera fragrances are either too sweet or too spicy, or they have this weird oud note that I can't quite get I don't really appreciate. And so this fragrance just didn't work out for me. Going on to the final fragrance in this list, and it's a bit of a sad one because it comes from a brand that is actually my favorite fragrance brand, and that is Guerlain. And I had tested this one a few times, on skin a few times, on paper also, and it's such a classic. It came out in 1920 something, I believe, several decades ago, probably coming up to 100 years actually, and that fragrance is Mitsouko. Now, Mitsouko is a classic. It's a classic Chypre fragrance, and I bought it mainly because I wanted to delve into the history of Guerlain to realize why they're so successful now and so well known now, because a lot of their success was built on fragrances like Mitsouko, like Shalimar, like Le Bleu, Lobler is actually on my to buy list. I think I should like that one a little bit better than Mitsouko. Mitsouko, actually, the ingredients are really good. It's a very, very nicely blended fragrance. I can see why it's a classic. It's quite unusual, quite different. If you're not used to that older style of fragrance, it might come as a little bit of a shock to you. And I liked all of the notes, but as I started wearing it, I noticed that when my body warmed up, the floral notes in this fragrance, the spicier notes in this fragrance jumped off of my skin quite a lot, combined and created an accord that made me feel quite nauseous. I didn't enjoy it at all. And I kind of got that feeling, actually, if you've seen one of my latest reviews on a Frederic Malle fragrance, in the opening of Noir Épice, there's spices and some floral notes in there, combining that just I don't quite like. The fragrance as it dries down is actually very good, but with Mitsouko I just couldn't get around it. You know, in the heart of this fragrance there's lilac, rose, jasmine and ylang ylang. You've also got clove and vetiver and cinnamon, and maybe all of those things coming together just didn't work out on my skin. But it was good to try, and that's what I quite like about actually being on this journey of fragrance exploration, is that you get to try different things and pick up on different compositions and accords and styles. So guys, that's my list of 5 fragrances I regret buying. We've all been there, and I feel to really appreciate or to recognize what you appreciate, you really have to realize what you dislike to know what you like the most. So guys, let me know what are the fragrances you regret purchasing. Give me your top 5 or your number 1. It'll be interesting to hear whether any of them are similar to mine. And yeah, thanks for watching. If you like what you see, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and check me out on Instagram. I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye.